What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I am making a bit of a break from the tutorial videos with a fun little comparison videos comparing Unreal Engine and Unity. I'll be making a basic Call of Duty Zombies like game. It's not going to be a very complex or long game, but it's more so I can compare programming from blueprints to C# and basically compare the editors head to head. So we're going to start off with the Unity project, and this is using just the default 3D. It doesn't have many features that Unreal has when you first create a project, so we're actually going to need to add quite a few things. First thing we're going to need to add is Pro Builder, and this will help us with creating the little barricade holes in the building later. And then I went on to CG Trader and got this zombie that's fully rigged and animated. And then next up I created an animator controller with all the animations it came with. I created a few variations of the zombies. And then I went back onto CG Trader and got this scene, which is basically a whole lot of models put together. Had a few troubles with the normals, so I went back into Blender, flipped those, re-imported them, and we were all good to go. I decided to remake all the materials, so I went to textures.com and grabbed some of the wood textures, stone textures, put those in, put some lighting in, then I went on to the Unity Asset Store and got this first person character controller, imported it in. Immediately it fell right through the ground, so I had to chuck a whole lot of colliders everywhere. And with the Pro Builder plugin that we enabled earlier, it allows me to easily create these holes in the structure, which saves a lot of time because I don't have to go back and forth from Blender. One thing I will say about Pro Builder though is it's not quite as easy as the Unreal built-in tools, and we'll touch on that later. Here I've added the terrain with some little hills and some snow textures on it. Then I add the nav mesh for the AI. And here in the zombie spawner, it's just taking some zombies and starting a coroutine which has a delay and keeps spawning zombies in. And then we have the zombie controller, which is just getting a reference to the navmesh agent and then setting it up with a destination, and then once it reaches that destination, as you can see here, it will start attacking. And then I went back onto CG Trader to get this gun model, which had some nice textures on it. Once that was in and attached to the first person camera, I added this little gun shooting script, which just sends a line trace out and references the zombie and damages it. And then I added this nice little crosshair which animates, as well as blood splatters when you hit the zombie. And to achieve the attacking, I added an animation event into the attack animation, which damaged the barricades that I created. And at certain damage intervals, the barricade planks would actually vanish as if the zombies were destroying them. And once all the zombies destroyed all the planks, then a game over screen would appear and the game would stop. Sweet, and now we're on to the Unreal Engine version of the game, which starts off nicely with a first person controller, so we don't have to add that. Then we bring our building model in, and we still have a few problems with extra building pieces, so we delete those, add the materials, and then we add some lighting, add the terrain, and we can walk around our scene now with our gun attached. And here's what I was talking about with the Pro Builder versus the built-in Unreal editing features, is that you've got a lot more options with the Unreal features. It's already built into the engine. I find it a little more reliable. And now we're on to the animation blueprint for the zombie. Just making the zombie blueprint right now, adding an attacking boolean, and then we're getting a reference to that. Here I made the mistake of not calling the zombie a pawn. You need to make sure you want to do that if you want to reference it in the animation blueprint. And then this is the zombie spawner, and it will just act the exact same as the Unity one. And then back in the zombie, we are creating a target actor variable, which will act as the barricade that the zombie is going to target. And with this, it's really helpful because we can expose it on spawn, so we can actually pass it through the zombie spawner into the zombie. And you can see here that I am creating a little actor, and then I am referencing that on the zombie spawner blueprint. Referencing it here, and now that'll pass through to the zombie when it spawns, and it will actually go towards that. Here I need to add the nav mesh first though, just to make sure it will move properly. Add the AI move to, and then once the path succeeds, it'll start attacking, as you can see there. Make sure you add your floating pawn movement component. And once it reaches the door, it'll start attacking. In the animation itself, we need to add a notifier. This is similar to the animation event. And with this, in the animation blueprint itself, we can then reference the notifier, and we can cast to the barricade and then apply damage to it. This means we need to add the damage event to the barricade itself, which will reduce the damage, and incrementally at certain points it will destroy planks, and at the end, after reaching 0 health, destroy the object entirely. So back here in the animation blueprint, you can see apply damage, and we're getting a reference to the barricade through the zombie. And now the zombie will destroy the planks, just like the Unity version. And this is just the shooting of the gun, similar to Unreal, it's just a trace. And then similar to the barricade, we're adding a damage event to the zombie, just decrementing the health until it reaches 0 and destroying it. Back in the first person controller though, we break the hit result out. With the hit actor reference, we damage it. Here you can see it takes about 5 shots. And then we're creating our first widget, which is just going to be the HUD with the crosshair and a little animation when you shoot. And then with an event dispatcher, we're calling the shot and then binding it to that animation. Here I am creating a little blood splatter. I actually found the default omnidirectional burst to work fine, and then we're spawning that when the zombie gets damaged. And we're actually we change it to point damage because this will allow us to get the precise location of the shot and then pass that through to the particles so it spawns exactly where the zombie gets shot. And then in the level blueprint, I am simply making the end game, so when each barricade is destroyed, it'll decrement from the amount of barricades there are, and it will end the game. Here's the final results comparing the games to each other versus the Unity one, and I think the Unity one looks pretty nice. It has a certain stylistic quality to it which I enjoy. It's not totally realistic, and I think you get that from a lot of Unity games. There's certainly a lot of stuff I could have done to improve the lighting and textures and materials and everything, but that would require a lot of time. So here's the Unreal one, and I think it certainly has more realistic qualities to it, but it doesn't have quite the charm that the Unity one has, I think. It doesn't really have a lot of style to it. And the lighting is much more intense in a smaller radius. That's one thing I noticed. It doesn't spread as much as Unity does. I think the actual making of the game was a lot faster in Unreal though, and this is because blueprints are an amazing prototyping tool. And I think this really points out the kind of brighter nature that Unity has that I was talking about, and the lighting intensity that I was also talking about, with the kind of source of Unreal's lighting being a lot brighter, but not spreading out as far. Anyway guys, that'll do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more both Unreal and Unity content in the future. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.